There's a ton of consolidation in the industry today. And how much of your time has been spent on looking at walkovers and acquisitions versus actually developing the agents you have? Today, I spoke with Howard Lorey. He is the Executive Vice President and Brokerage Manager of Nourmand Associates, a 200 agent brokerage in Los Angeles. And he talked a lot about what they're doing to develop agents and increase that production, as well as recruit and retain in a way that they are not as concerned about the acquisitions and the walkovers and are able to increase their business just through agent development and relationship building. So take a seat, have a listen, and enjoy the podcast. Howard, welcome to the podcast. Really appreciate you getting on with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Tracey. I'm really happy to be here.
So you're in LA and you had a really interesting profession before you got into real estate. You probably still are a musician, once a musician, always a musician. So tell me a little bit about that and how you got into real estate from there.
You know, it's interesting. I grew up in Oklahoma City. My father and uncle were all opera singers with Metropolitan Opera and New York Opera Company. So when I was there growing up, it was an influence on me. I majored in classical voice in college and then transitioned after college into a professional career as a singer and songwriter. I toured and recorded and performed a lot, but I did it for about 13 years. And, after 13 years, I felt inspired to figure out a different way to earn money rather than being on the road all the time or being I primarily worked at night. So my father-in-law at that time owned his own residential brokerage called the Chateau Company. And he was located in Laguna Beach. And I think he had about 20, 25 agents. And, it was just very appealing to me. It was intriguing. I found a lot of similarities between music and this career. I guess I would say I found a lot of similarities between an artistic career, like maybe as an actor or as a singer or musician, and real estate. I find them very similar. So I transitioned.
How so? Tell me a little bit about that. How do you find them similar? What were you able to take with you to real estate to kind of propel your success?
Well, when you're a recording artist or you're an actor or you're doing something creative, it's up to you to curate who you are and how people see you and your brand, whatever that may be. If you're, like I said, a singer or an artist or doing something creative, you are the pilot of that. And you are in control of how people are going to perceive you and how you are going to present that to the world. And real estate has that. It's very, and I would say even more so in the last 10 years. And I just found it, and also the being on the ground and having to hustle for business, very, very similar. Music was the same way. I know acting is the same way. You've got to go out and make it happen. Can't sit on your hands and wait for opportunity to come to you. You have to go out and make things happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So obviously now you're the Executive Vice President and Brokerage Manager of Nourmand Associates. And I know your focus is heavy on recruiting and revenue growth. So tell me a little bit strategically about what you're doing to really attract talent, and then we'll kind of go into retaining talent from there.
One of the main things that I've always done in the business that has transitioned well into my leadership role is just being very invested in people, being very invested in my relationships with people. That's something I've always felt natural at. It's something that I'm good at. I like it. I enjoy it. I like meeting new people. And then with people that I have relationships with, I like going deeper. I like having a personal connection with them. In boosting their agent productivity. And so in attracting those people, what I generally do is I look for people that maybe are underutilized or underappreciated at a larger company. Maybe they're underperforming slightly, or maybe they've plateaued or not totally realizing their full potential, or maybe they're even stuck. And I usually meet with them and talk with them about potentially coming over and having more of a one-on-one relationship with me through business development and through our other leadership in utilizing the all of the things that we have as a brokerage to offer.
Do you find, do you use something specific to find those people, or how are you identifying the right agent for your firm?
Generally through marketplace, through data analysis, I go in and I'll look at quantitative data. And that'll give me an idea. Usually through the data, I can see patterns. I can see if they're plateaued, if they're growing, if they're falling off. It's very true. It's kind of a cliche, but in our business, if you're not growing, you're usually falling. And the key to that is perpetual growth. So I use the data, and then usually I already know them. I already have some sort of familiarity with them, and I keep it very organic. I don't try to sell anybody or be disingenuous. It's just a conversation, about if they're satisfied with what they're doing and where they are.
Yeah, it seems to me like the people who do that best really are authentic and wanting to talk to people or get to know people. And like, what do you, I guess, tips do you have for other, recruiters, managers, brokers who really maybe are introverts or really have a hard time with that?
Understood. Yeah. No, I can understand that. I think the data is really important. Quantitative data can tell you a lot of things. It can be hard to live there because I think sometimes you do have to have the human element behind it. But if you're introverted or you feel, less like being social is not a strength that you have, sometimes you can do it through, maybe having a company business mixer, getting out and having small group lunches where you don't feel like you have to be on, or host 300 people or something like that. But taking a more personal approach and having a hands-on investment in the development of the agent, as opposed to the old way we used to do it, where you'd hire an agent, you bring them in, you show them your collateral, and then you say, if you need me, call me. I think those days are gone. I think we have to be more hands-on invested with the people that we're recruiting and retaining, for that matter.
Yeah, and let's go into that. So obviously recruiting and attracting talent is one thing, but then increasing productivity and retaining those agents is a whole nother ball game. So talk to me about some of the strategies that you maybe implemented or really focus on based on your strengths.
So what I do, so we have this system that I developed came to me through actual agent training when I used to train new licensees. And I realized around 2010, I felt like there was a component missing because we were teaching them all of these amazing things about legal and how to do a contract and all those things. But I felt like the business development, we weren't teaching it. We weren't teaching agents how to be agents. We were teaching them how not to get sued, which is important. But we weren't really teaching them how to build their business, and we weren't helping them get clear about what they wanted and what their goals were. And everybody's goals are different. So I do it through a series of sessions with the agent. I do them either in small groups or I do them one-on-one, depending on who the agent is. And we start with quantitative analysis. We look at data first. We source business. We figure out where their business is coming from. And then we have a series of qualitative exercises and discussion that we talk about, that it's simply focused on the agent, strengths, weaknesses, goals, motivators, reasons they do certain things that they do. And it gives me a much deeper understanding and better relationship with the agent, where I can really be invested in what they're doing and understand as I work with them, like what they're struggling with, what they're excelling at, and then helping them eliminate things that they may be wasting time and energy and money on.
Yeah. And how many agents do you have now?
I think we have just under 200 agents.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
don't work directly with all of them. I think right now I work with about 70, 75 of our agents.
And so obviously there's a lot going on in the industry right now. We've got a lot of changes coming up with agent compensation and particularly buyers agents. Well, really listing agents too have to know how to have these conversations as well as buyers agents. So how have you been addressing that with agents and what types of training are you doing to help them when this all goes into effect, I think mid-August. So
Yeah. August 17th is when it's coming down. Um, I mean, obviously we're training them on the new buyer broker agreement. I think there were 13 or 14 states that were already mandating it. So I'm actually happy that we're mandating it as a state. I think it's going to be a good thing. So we're obviously training them on that so that they understand how to use the form properly and different ways they can structure it. It can be exclusive or non-exclusive. But I think the more important component is to retrain them to use their listing agent skill set so that they can differentiate and substantiate their value in doing that, and learning what the client values through discovery rather than spending all the time quantifying their own value and talking about themselves. I think that is a waste. That can be a waste of time and energy because a lot of times you need to know what they want first, what they need, what they value first. If you know that, it makes your job a lot easier. So again, I think it's more listening, less talking about yourself, and more discovery.
yeah, and there's a lot of confusion around it because I think, NAR was saying you can offer compensation in different areas off the MLS, and the DOJ is saying no, can't do that. So there's really a lot of confusion around it. And how are you addressing that? With agents, how are you advising them?
So we're addressing it. We talk about it every week. I think people are getting a little bit fatigued by the discussion, but I think it's necessary. I actually think the issues get commingled because I believe in our market in Los Angeles, the issue really is not about there not being buyer broker compensation. It's just about not being able to publish it. And I think there's a lot of fear in the agent marketplace because they believe it's like, oh my gosh, they're not going to offer buyer broker commissions anymore. Well, Michael Normand and I did a deep dive analysis on the data, and there's like 98% of our market is still offering almost full fee for buyer brokers. Excuse me, for brokers for buyers. So so it's kind of getting them refocused on what the issue is about it being published within the MLS and how we're going to navigate that. And if it's going to become a closing cost, how we're going to build that in with a lender. And yes, there's going to be hurdles. It's going to be different, but this business is about evolution and growth. And I think it's just retraining the way we've been doing business for 30 years or more.
Yeah, absolutely. In where do you see kind of the most opportunity in today's industry or market? It seems to me that the better prepared brokers tend to grow market share in markets like today that are low inventory but growing in inventory now. So talk to me a little about where you see the most opportunities and where your brokerage is focusing on those.
Really good question. I think there's a lot of different opinions right now on where the growth is, especially with all the acquisition that's happened in the last 8 to 10 years. My personal philosophy, my belief is that the growth that is available to brokerages is between the agents and the brokerage leadership. I think that agents are desperately missing connectivity right now because of how large the companies have gotten. I started my career with a very large brokerage. I was very happy there. I have nothing bad to say about large brokerages, but the larger they get, the harder it is to give the agents the support they need to really succeed. And it's so competitive now. And there's so many different things that you need to do in order to be successful. So to answer your question, I believe it's in development. I believe it's in the retention of your talented people that you have, helping them adopt and grow, adopt new strategies and skill sets, and training the new people up in the correct way, not the old way that we did it 15 years ago.
Do you have any type of, do you work with a specific trainer, or do you have a team at your brokerage doing a lot of that training?
Yes, we do. We have a very organized training program for new licensees that's run by one of our leaders, Chris Furstenberg, and our broker of record, Carolyn Ray Cole. And then they work directly with mentors within each branch that partner with agents. So the agents get the mentorship training with them, they get business development with me, and then they get marketing development with our marketing team. So it gets kind of a three-headed monster that they get.
Yeah, I think that business development is, the business development side of it, though, is, like you said, so important. I don't think that it's a huge focus. And so they, agents come into the business and they really aren't sure, how to grow, where to go, what to do. All they hear is the marketing side of it.
That's right. I agree. And, marketing is so important in what we do, but marketing doesn't really create business. Marketing creates brand awareness and opportunity, but it doesn't really make people call you and say, I want to list my home or I want to buy a home. It creates their awareness of who you are, what your brand looks like, and maybe it gravitates them to you. So
it doesn't help them at tax time either.
No, it doesn't. Not at all.
Yeah, I think, it is interesting, the different structures that agents can take on. But not only that, just the understanding that they're running their own business within another business, and like really kind of getting that education on running a business, because I don't think that all of them are really expecting that when they get into real estate.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's the weakest part of brokerage. And it's the part where I think there is the most growth opportunity for brokerages and for leadership.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm going to flip gears and I want to talk about you now. So let me know, what is your most impactful aha moment that you've had, whether it was personal or in your professional career?
I think the most aha moment, that's a great question. It kind of has a little bit to do with what we just talked about a little bit, but it's when I realized that it was around 2015. It's when I realized that most brokerage models were either outdated or broken, and understanding, like, why aren't we teaching this? Why aren't people teaching agents how to do this? Nobody ever taught me how to do it when I was an agent. They just taught me the mechanics of being an agent, which was important, and the legal side of it. And I realized that what brokerages were doing was mismanaging their brokerages and their rosters, and not seeing the value in a lot of people that they had, because they were so focused on big agents that did tons of business. And those are obviously, that's obviously very important to a brokerage, but just realizing that what agents really needed was not being taught, was not being fostered, and that what we were doing and what I had been doing was correct, but that we needed to lean into it more, develop it more, create more support systems. That was 2015, but that was a big wake-up call.
Absolutely. And I should know this, but I don't. What is your compensation model? Are you traditional or transaction fee, or?
We're traditional. We're not a fee-based company. We're traditional. We have very attractive splits. We provide a lot. We have the business coaching, we have marketing, but we're not a cap company. We're not a fee-based company.
So let's talk about some things that motivate you, books or podcasts or anything that you have read, or leaders that have influenced your professional philosophy.
Well, there's an organization that we belong to. It's called Leading Real Estate Companies of the World. They're based in Chicago, and we're a member of that. And some of the leadership there that I've worked with that have really influenced me. There's a gentleman named Mike Staver, Dan Elzer, Matthew Ferreira. Those guys are really smart guys, very experienced, very good with helping you see clearly as far as leadership, but uh, very much more big picture, less minutia, less micromanagement, and they've all three helped me tremendously. And I have worked with them through that organization. Then there's a great book that I read called Ego versus EQ, and it was written by a woman named Jen Shirkani. She published it, I think, in 2013. I highly recommend it if you could read it. It really talks about the importance of emotional intelligence and how you manage yourself, how the less in tune with it you are, the more of a ripple effect you can have negatively on your organization, on your peers, on your business. Great book. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read that one. That sounds good. And I will let I just talked to Dan actually, but Mike Staver spoke at one of our, actually he
Oh,
spoke at multiple Gathering of Eagles over the years. And
yeah.
both are great guys. And I've heard of Matthew as well, but I don't know him personally. So yeah.
Yeah, Matthew, they're all three different. I work with Mike the most, but I've worked with all three really brilliant guys. Really interesting, insightful things to say, especially for leadership. The ways that you can really inspire people that you work with. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about maybe a significant setback that you faced and kind of the lessons it taught you about leading in real estate.
yeah, for us and for me, the hardest thing I think was the acquisition frenzy that started, I think, in 2014 or 2015, and all the venture capital money that came in, no accountability. It was just free money, paying unsustainable splits and marketing allowances. And, we held our own through that. We did well, but we lost some key people. Um, but realizing that what I was doing was working, but still wasn't enough, and that I had to double down. It was hard. It was very challenging, very difficult. It was painful in a lot of ways, but just learning that not to get too comfortable, and that your growth can hide in being comfortable. It can hide complacency, and you need to just keep learning, perpetual growth. You don't always have to make huge changes, but you need to be continuously learning and growing and striving to do things better. And that doesn't always mean more money. I guess what I'm saying is that doesn't always mean your goal has to be to make more money. It can be actually to be just better at what you do. And I think that for me was the key to raising our bar as a company and as leaders in our marketplace.
Yeah, that M&A scene has changed dramatically from back then. With the private equity's kind of gotten out. They're not really purchasing anymore. And I think really Compass is focused on walkovers and rather than agent acquisition now, and doing some M&A. Obviously, they had a huge one with Letter and Blum, but yeah, so that whole landscape has really changed a lot in the past several years, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's been fascinating to watch, the ground that they gained in the short amount of time with the money that they had raised. It was impressive. I just don't know if it was sustainable. I don't know long term if it's going to be sustainable. I really believe that agent growth is the key to our industry, and that having healthy agents is the key. And you need brokerage. You need brokerage. You need leadership. You need people to help the agents focus on business so that leadership and brokerage can focus on brokerage. It's two different things. And somehow that got lost. It was like they felt like, oh, we don't need brokerage anymore. And I was like, I just don't see it that way. I just see it differently.
Yeah, the relationships are the key, I think, and that's the focus that I think a lot of brokers are taking now, especially smaller ones. I wouldn't consider you small, but not the humongous ones out there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, we're under 200 agents, so we have 3 branches. We don't have 2,000 agents. That's a different animal. Um, but yeah, it's been a fascinating cycle the last 10 years. I've learned a ton. I think the next 10 years are going to be exciting too. I think there's a lot of really exciting, good things coming. I don't think people should be afraid. I think they should keep learning.
well, I'm going to elaborate on that one because that is my final question is how do you
Oh,
envision
okay.
the future of the industry or the real estate transaction kind of changing in the next decade?
It's interesting. I think that there's going to be more consolidation. I think some of the larger companies are going to, and probably more some of the mid-sized companies are going to start going away from so much brick and mortar. They already have. I think that's going to continue. I think it's going to become more fluid with the way we transact and operate, similar to the way we did during the pandemic. I think that kind of catapulted us 5 years forward sooner than we would have. But I think the transaction mechanics are going to continue to evolve and get even more streamlined. And I also believe how the agents effectuate lead generation and gain clients is going to continue to evolve. But I still think the actual transaction is going to be about the relationship. I just don't think, at least in our marketplace in Los Angeles, I don't think people are going to click away to buy a house, to buy a home. It's too litigious. The prices are too high. There's too much disclosure. There's too much going on. They need an agent. They need a professional, a pro who knows what they're doing, who knows the city, who understands the risks and can prevent them from making a bad investment. And I don't think that IT or I don't think tech can do that. I think tech can
It
help make
hasn't
it
so
more
far.
fluid. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
hasn't so far. I mean, do you remember, gosh, I mean, I've been in real estate for a long time, reporting on it. And I remember all the big disruptors that, and they didn't disrupt the relationship between the agent and the buyer seller.
Yeah. I agree with you. And listen, I believe in tech. I use it. We embrace it. And I think AI is going to have some impact on our industry, but I still think when someone is buying or selling, they need a relationship with a person who can advise them properly, especially when they're buying. Am I making a bad investment? I think that a person is going to be able to provide that more fluidly than AI or tech. But I do think tech is going to continue to streamline our transaction mechanics and lead generation. So most of our younger agents, when I say our, I mean in the industry, are embracing that and doing more of it. And then we're seeing more of our seasoned pros doing the same thing. So I think it's a good thing.
Well, Howard, thank you so much for joining the Real Trending podcast. We really appreciate all your insights and information about your company.
Thank you, Tracey. Thanks for having me. I enjoy your podcast. I appreciate it. Thank you.